Today we will be discussing the sectors of economy. Actually, I was supposed to do types of economy, but prior to it, it is required to go through sectors of economy. When sectors of economy will be completed, then only we will continue with this types of economy. So if we try to understand the sectors of economy is basically um, economy. If you see in the literal sense, economy is about the management, right? And economy, n number of activities are taking place. So to understand it better, we need to hierarchize the different activities. That means we have to arrange them in a hierarchy to understand the system in a systematic manner. For example, if you say that if in the morning you are getting bread, right, or if you are getting paneer, then you need to understand that is there anything which is happening behind this activity that you are getting bread or paneer. So is there anything which is taking place in the background of that bread and paneer? So if you talk in the economic sense, systematically you want to understand that what is basically happening. So you have to understand it in a systematic manner, all the activities. So to avoid any hazard understanding, you have to put them in a perspective, in a system, in a hierarchy. And putting all the activities in a hierarchy so as to better understand the economy is basically dividing them or converting them into sectors of the economy, right? So I'll come to the slide. So if we talk about the initial societies, so all the societies were basically primitive societies. Primitive in the sense, basically every society starts with a nomadic life, right? They are acting as a nomads, depending upon they're collecting the things, hunting the animals, right? They don't have any permanent basis of their living. Those primitive societies then start, if you term in literal sense of economic activity which has been accepted by the modern economy, that is basically agriculture, right? Agriculture, that means the individuals are carrying out the agricultural activities, and more refined, in a more refined manner, if you talk about in sector terminology, this is basically primary sector, right? So coming to the slides. So is it visible? Slide is visible. So if we talk about sectors, economic sectors, right? Economic sectors is nothing but groups of economy arranged according to their place in the hierarchy of production chain, right? For example, I talked to you, I took the example of if you're getting bread or paneer in the morning, then you have to understand that what is the process taking place in the back end of this activity. If you try to understand the production chain, then you will realize that it is starting from wheat, right? If we talk about that bread you're getting, then wheat is coming from the farmers, and after the farmer is selling his wheat to the that flour mill, then that the owner of the manufacturer who is in charge of flour mill is converting that wheat into flour, right? And then that flour, when finally is prepared, then this is manufactured flour is transported to the bakery, right? Then finally this bakery person prepares bread, and then this bread is being transported, right? And this transported bread is again further transported to the people, and it reaches to retailer and finally to the consumer. So this is how things work, right? So we are trying to arrange all the activities, economic activities in the hierarchy. So that is basically arranging the economic activities in the hierarchy is basically the sectors. So all economic activity was in the primary sector during early age of civilization, right? As I already discussed that initially every society is agricultural society, and agriculture is nothing but it is said to be the primary society, primary sector. After the surplus production of food, actually you people try to join the class before 25, because I am, you people are engaging me for allowing you only, right? After the surplus production of food, people's need for other products increased, which led to the development of the secondary sector. That means when people realize that they are having, for example, in initial societies, what people were doing, people were just growing wheat, and then they were a sort of doing subsistence agriculture. Subsistence, the term which I am dictating, you should note them down, because these terms are very important in that sense that UPSC use all these terms. They can ask you, if you are clear with the concept, then then you can do the question. Otherwise it can disturb you. The question can because such terms are used in the questions. That's why please focus on the words which I am referring to. Subsistence agriculture means the initial people were only doing the agriculture only for the surviving purpose. They were not using it for selling or trading purposes. So initial societies were basically doing subsistent agriculture. Even if we talk about Indian agriculture, so most of the people are still pursuing subsistence agriculture. Don't imagine your agriculture in your area like in the northern India, people are literally doing subsistent agriculture. In your region, farmers, I don't know the exact situation, but most of the farmers in your region are rich and they are sort of doing corporate farming and all those things. But in the northern India, in this belt, people are still pursuing, they are doing subsistent agriculture, right? So after the people realize that now we have produced more, and initially what people were doing, they were doing bartering system. Bartering means exchange. Exchange means that if you are producing wheat and you are Mr. X and Mr. Y is producing milk, then what these people were doing, Mr. Y was giving milk to Mr. X and Mr. X was giving wheat to Mr. Y. This was bartering system, barter system, right? And this was the initial economic system existing in the initial societies, initial civilizations. So when these people realize that our production is more than our subsistence, then they think that now to process their produce, right? Process means sort of production, manufacturing, right? So the conversion of wheat into flour is what? It is also processing. So whatever you are getting, if you say that tomato ketchup sauce, right? Bread you are getting, these are already processed things, right? So you are getting pickle. Any packaged food is basically processed food, right? And if we talk in the Indian context, our food processing industry is in its nascent stage, right? We haven't developed our food processing industry to the level with which it should be, right? So it should be aware to you, because this context will be utilized in the main syllabus. There you will find this syllabus, food processing industry is a topic. Then comes the growth of secondary sector. So basically the processing part, right? The processing, the manufacturing or the industrial part is basically secondary sector, right? Then comes the growth of secondary sector, spread its influence during the industrial revolution in the 19th century, right? So European industrial revolution was nothing but it was basically the promotion, the growth of secondary sector, right? So a support system was needed to facilitate the industrial activity. So if you see, take an example, if you produce this bread, come to this example, the bakery has produced the bread, and if this bread is lying within the factory, if nobody knows that there is something like bread in the economy, and this bread is not transported to the wholesaler and then to the retailer and then to the consumer, that means this bread will remain idle. Finally, this bakery person will not be motivated to produce anything like bread, because there is no buyer. Why this bakery will produce the bread if that bread is just only for the purposes of putting in their warehouses, just for getting वो फंगी उस पे लगेगा, ये सारी चीजें, राइट? So that means this part, post Manufacturing, all these components are very crucial for promotion or for facilitating these production, right? So these are the sectors. Certain sectors like transport, this we refer to. Finance, finance means, for example, this all these things will be required. For example, there should be banking sector, which will basically promote the more uh, more factories to come in, because if the demand of the bread in the economy increases, then in that case it might be a possibility that the person, there is no need to write present, right? You can put it later on after the class, because it distracts me. So all these sectors like transport, finance, and these warehouses and selling of the things, wholesaling, retailing, these things are basically not presenting anything, not creating anything directly, but they are basically promoting these activities. They are promoting basically the industrial activity. So this is said to be tertiary sector, right? Now, economic sector, if you want to classify the economic sectors, there are n number of provisions, parameters on which we can classify these sectors. So most prominently what we discussed today is basically this parameter on the basis of activity nature, which we discussed right now. These two parameters will be discussed in later on classes, like on basis of assets ownership, on basis of work condition. This will we will discuss later. This is basically a complete chapter we will be discussing in that public sector units, liberalization, and on basis of work condition, we will be discussing in types of economy, right? So on the basis of activity nature, we will discuss this in this class. Primary. To understand the primary, primary as the name suggests that it is the basis, right? And the basis means, if we talk about the mother earth, then the basis of everything is mother nature, right? Nature. So anything, any sector which is all about nature, that means if anything is being extracted or produced by exploiting or by using natural resources, is said to be primary sector. So imagine all these things. This is agriculture, right? This earth, agriculture is basically nature. This is again natural thing, all the dairy part, this forestry, this shipping, right? Mining, right? Fishing. So everything which we are extracting, in which we are referring to mother nature, that is basically primary sector, right? Second, what basically it's hierarchy. I told you that we have to put these activities in a hierarchy. Now if you say, if we take the example of bread, then first if we take in that sense, then the wheat was produced from this field, and this wheat was basically part of primary sector in our previous example. Then comes when you have taken the wheat, then it was processed by the flour mill, right? This flour mill is basically this transforming your wheat to flour, right? And it is subsequent to the primary sector. It is subsequent to the wheat. It covers all activities in which natural product, that is wheat, are changed into other forms, that is flour, through ways of manufacturing processes. And it is also called as industrial sector. People engaged in secondary activities are called blue collar works, blue collar workers, right? And again, if this flour is being converted into bread, is again an activity which is part of secondary sector. So if you see all these power projects, these industries, manufacturing industry, this auto sector, right? These are basically secondary sector. So all the industrial sector, all the industrial activities which you see are basically part of your secondary sector. Then comes tertiary. First and foremost, you have to keep in your mind that when we were discussing example of that bread, I told you that suppose this bread was produced by the bakery. Now, what is happening after it? This was transported to wholesaler. This wholesaler transported it to retailer, and this retailer transported it to you, consumer. Now, tell me one thing. This was the bread produced by the manufacturer, and you got. Do you find any change in this bread? This bread was similar at this point of time, as well as this bread was same which you got the same bread which was produced by the manufacturer of the bread, that is bakery. That means, and this I told you, this sector starting from transportation from manufacturer to your doorstep, this was basically services sector. And if you see it effectively, it does not add anything to the produced manufactured item. The bread remains the same. This you have to keep it in mind. But again, I took the example of the bread. If this transportation wholesaler retailer was not there, then this manufacturer will not produce any bread. When this manufacturer does not produce any bread, that means there was no motivation for the flour mill to produce that flour. And when there was no motivation for the flour mill to produce flour, then he will not demand wheat. When the wheat was not demanded by this flour mill, then to whom the farmer will produce the wheat? That means if you do a sort of reverse engineering, this tertiary sector, this is basically tertiary sector. This all is tertiary sector, which is not producing any good at their own. Rather, it is basically promoting the development of this sector, that is primary and secondary. If there was no tertiary sector, then this primary and secondary sector might not have developed to the level with which it is existing right now. It might still be in the nascent stage, right? Then this sector produces intangible goods, that is services. Intangible means invisibles, right? That is you don't see the services. You can only, it's an abstract. It's an abstract because if you see this bread was transported from here to the final consumer. So it appears as an abstract thing because nothing has been added to it. Nothing visible has been added, value added, and there has not been any value addition. This sector jobs are called white collar jobs, right? Now later on, when the tertiary sector, see, one thing you have to understand that tertiary sector starts from, it's not like that it is only the professional people who you find in software services and all that. Rather, if you talk in your terms of the blaze, you will find that a person who is selling milk to you, and if you're staying in Hyderabad, the person who is bringing paper to you, that is hawker, the person who is selling vegetable, he's also part of tertiary sector because it's a service. Now later on, it was realized that the range of the services sector is very diverse. in the sense that can you compare the skill set of a person who is a hawker to a person who is CEO of a company, right? The skill set is very diverse, and as per the definition, both are part of tertiary sector. Now it was realized that this further needs to be classified or for the better understanding. So tertiary sector was further classified into as quaternary or quinary sector, right? And this quaternary and quinary sector is basically that part of tertiary sector which needs more skills, right? So if you talk about quaternary sector, it's basically knowledge based part. And for your information, India is many times you might have seen or heard or read in the books. India is knowledge-based economy. Knowledge-based economy. From here, you will understand that's why India is said to be knowledge-based economy, which typically includes services such as information, consultation, education, financial, and planning. So, quaternary services are all those services which require these specialized knowledge, specialized skills like information technology, finance, consultation, legal services, right? And again, if you talk about, if you further go into more detailing of it, if you take an example of a company, in a company you will find that, for example, if you take the example of a IT company, you will find that it starts, the employees in that company starts from a software engineer to a CEO of a company. Now see the diversity in their work profile. This person is engaged in executing the jobs. That is, for example, he might be developing something, he might be executing the codes. Rather, this person is not involved in all these things. He is involved in decision making. He's involved in decision making. So, uh, even professionals were classified as quaternary and quinary. So, this software person who is doing that type of service is referred to or classified into quaternary sector. While this CEO or the head of a company who is engaged in decision making is basically part of quinary sector. Right? So professional under this category are referred to as gold collar professionals, and CEOs of the companies or bureaucrats who are involved in decision making are part of quinary sector. So in this we have tried to understand how this correlation works, how every sector is correlated. So here, if you talk about oil sector, so oil is extracted from this here, and this is being manufactured. And finally, here, this manufactured refining, that is refining. And after the refining, this oil is being transported, advertised, warehouse, selling. So this all is basically part of services. This is primary, this is secondary. If you see the example of that bread, it starts from wheat. This is primary. This is primary. Flour and bread, because manufacturing is taking place, that is secondary. And finally, it is being sold. It includes each and everything starting from this bakery to the final consumer. This is tertiary. So this is how the correlation exists. Primary followed by secondary and then followed by tertiary. So this is a sort of analysis sort of thing, and it's an understanding how different sectors have evolved with due course of time. It's just for your understanding. Don't talk that, don't try to compare it on any time scale and all those things. This is just for your understanding. So if you talk about primary activities, in the initial societies, it what at its peak. See, at its peak. With due course of time, it's getting down, it's reducing. Talking secondary, so this is secondary. Basically, initially it was also existing, but the level was low and it increased, it took a curve, and finally starts decreasing, declining. And tertiary sector, it's consistently increasing, right? And this is the point of deindustrialization. Deindustrialization means that as the societies grow, evolve, then societies shifted to services sector. Keep it in your mind, all the developed societies are basically derived by tertiary activities, right? Tertiary and initial, though tertiary activities were also in the initial societies, but I told you that those tertiary activities were different in nature. For example, person who was giving you milk, the person, the goldsmith in your village, right? All those people were also part of the services sector, but it was comparatively in the nation stage, right, and comparatively lower in comparison to the present tertiary tertiary activities. And quaternary as well as quinary came late into scenario when the societies get more the modern world, these services. So this is also part of tertiary sector. By definition, it's also part of tertiary sector, but this quaternary came after a long time. So these tertiary activities are those tertiary activities which were in the primary societies. So this is an understanding that how the different sectors have evolved over time. Sunrise industry is a very popular term which is which is people are talking about. Even it got its reference in economic survey, like they were referring to that food processing industry is a sunrising industry, right? Healthcare is a sunrising industry. So sunrise industry is a term used for a sector that is just in its infancy, but shows promise of a rapid boom. That means there's very high probability that this industry will exponentially rise in the coming future, right? So the characteristic of this industry is that it is having high growth rates, it is having high degree of innovation, and it is having more awareness amongst the people, in the sense that people are more attractive to it. The people, not only the people, but investors are also attracted to it, right? So the examples are information technology, telecom sector, healthcare, retail sector, food processing industry. So all these sectors are those sectors in which you also see the potential in the coming times, right? So here, this is from your NCRT, and this is just for the understanding of the contribution of change uh, in this importance of tertiary sector. The importance of tertiary sector is increasing with due course of time, right? So it's saying that initially, uh, what I told you, that initial societies were also having the services, right? And basically services also exist in every society, but the nature of the services differs. For example, these services, if you find hospitals, education institutions, post and telegraph, these are certain basic services. These are basic services which do exist in every society, and they're essential for an economy, in the sense that without these basic services, no country can survive, because these services are essential for the functioning of a country or government, right? Then it says that development of agriculture and industry led to the development of services such as transport. As I already told you, that agriculture and industry motivated the development of the tertiary sector, and it's basically mutual. Initially, primary and secondary sector motivated or facilitated the promotion of tertiary sector, but later on it was realized that tertiary sector facilitated the development of the primary and secondary sector. So it's a mutual agreement, mutual understanding, mutual relationship between primary, secondary, and tertiary. Then it is saying that this is saying that when the income of the people rises, then the nature of the services required in an economy changes. For example, you can see it practically. If you see people surrounding you, you will find that now people are using different sort of services. For example, can you imagine 20 or 30 years back? I don't know about your Telangana and Andhra or South India, but I can tell you in Northern India, people were not going to tourism, right? In the name of tourism, people in our region were going to their nani's house, right? Going to their grandparents' house in summer holidays, right? Nowadays, if you talk to a kid of class five, he's saying that he's planning to going to Australia, he's planning to going to Goa and all those things, right? And people are doing adventurous tourism. People don't know adventurous tourism now. If you see that people, um, I think when I was discussing about that growth versus development, I took the example of Kedarnath, that they were in 2013 there were floods. In the initial days, or 30 or 40 years back, or 20, 30 years back, limited people were going to such shrines, right? Like people 100, 200, 500, at max 500 to 600 people were going, right? Nowadays people are doing pilgrimage tourism, right? So that means the nature of services has changed. Now if you see, everything has been an industry. So if you talk about hospitality, you talk about schooling, is all sort of a different, complete different service. Outing, eating, right? Eateries, it's altogether a different sort of service. Then if you see the present scenario, if you see all these things like Uber, Ola, all the aggregators, what these are all services part. Then it is saying over the past decade, information technology has become very important. That is very clear. Then if you see this, this is telling you how the importance of tertiary sector has increased, right? This is how, not only in absolute terms, but percentage wise, in every term, tertiary sector has increased and it has overtaken primary as well as secondary sector. So initially, in the contribution of GDP, this contribution of primary sector was huge, but now this has been replaced by tertiary sector. This is again, these all graphs are from NCRT. So if you talk in terms of share of sectors in GDP, you'll find now it's around 64 to 65% is secondary sector, oh sorry, tertiary sector. And this, in this graph, it is around 12. Actually, this agriculture contributing around 14%, but now during the corona times, in the last 2 or 3 years, it has increased to 16%, and around 19 to 20% is this manufacturing. So this is how the contribution is changing. While around 1973, 74, it was only around 50%, less than 50%. So this is consistently increasing. Services is consistently increasing, and agriculture, which was around 40%, is consistently decreasing. I told you that if you talk in terms of its growth, again, I was telling you that agriculture is in the crisis because of a number of reasons. Because after 1991, we focused on the GDP growth itself, right? This is the answer when I was discussing inclusive growth, right? I was telling you that we focus only on the pace of the growth. Now, growth we were getting from here only. That's why the contribution of this consistently increases. It increases from 50 to 64. While here there is a need of lot of investment. There's need of lot of capital investment, capital formation, right? And that's why there was a gradual decrease, consistent decrease, right? And that's why that means when this is consistently decreasing and people dependent upon this are still 65%. That's why it is said that agriculture, people are dependent upon agriculture, but those people who are dependent upon agriculture are not growing at all. That is, they are basically promoting inequality, right? So the services sector is, and if you talk share of sectors in employment, it is again initially it was 71%, now 44%, right? And this is saying 44% employment, but if you see the dependency is 65%. And more than that, this is basically this concept of hidden employment that we'll discuss later on, hidden unemployment. Google it, right? The services sector is not only the dominant sector in India's GDP, but has also attracted significant foreign investment, right? Now, this is also given in as a, but one of the reasons for jobless growth is leapfrog jump from agriculture to services sector and bypassing manufacturing sector. Work on this, what it wants to say, right? If anybody can write up on this, you can prepare, give it to me in 100 words. And related to this is this question: why did India shift from primary sector to services sector and not secondary sector? Work on it, and you can give me a write up. So this is all about the sectors, right? Any query from this PPT?
No, sir, it's clear.
I don't think that there's nothing to be discussed here. If there's any query, you can ask so that I can move ahead. No, ठीक है. Right. Then next
It's
is,
clear, sir. It's clear.
okay, we'll be starting with this is types of economy. Right. If we talk about types of economic system, see, as I told you, economy is basically nothing but the management, household management. It's a, if we talk, it's about its origin of the term economy. It is basically a Greek word, and which means household management. So in economy, it's nothing but the management of the resources. Right? It's the management of the resources, and the management of the resources requires a lot of a number of activities which we discuss in the form of sectors. Now the question comes that how do we classify the economy, in the sense that if somebody says that country like in US is an open economy, and country like this North Korea is to an extent a closed economy, and then comes the question, somebody says that China is socialist, communist, and that US is capitalist economy. So here we will try to understand the different parameters to classify the economies, right? So is my PPT visible?
Yeah, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes,
So
sir.
here we are, what we are doing, that we have taken two parameters for classification of the economy. Right? And those parameters are, first is we are talking in reference to the economy with reference to the global economy. That means how we are interacting with the global economy. How we are interacting with the global economy, first parameter. And that means here we are looking external. We are looking external and we are uh, referring our relationship to the global economy. While in this in the second parameter, we are looking economy internally. Right. So internally means how the internal demand and supply is defining the mode of the economy, and secondly our interaction with the global economy, how it is being defined. So if we talk our relationship with the world economy, armies, the economies, then the economies can either be talking to the world economies or they are not at all talking to the world economies. Right? So on that basis, economies are classified either as the closed economy or the open economy. Right? So if we take the example of open economy, that is, this is basically, if we referring to India, this is India and this is world. So if this gate is opened, see, this is an ideal condition. Ideal. This is an ideal condition. Here, if we are talking the characteristics of the open economy, we are referring to the ideal conditions, right? That means the gate is open for goods and services, for the people sitting in this car. Third, for the money to move in and move out. People can go without any hindrance, without any barrier. Goods and services can go without any barrier. Money can go without any barrier. All the gates are opened for all these three things. This is an open economy. So if you see, it exports goods and services and imports, right? It borrows money. Residents can go. So this is again an interpretation of all these things, right? So basically, trade is taking place, people are moving in and out, exchange of currency is taking place. This is how the open economy is. Now, for your information, okay, tell me, is there ideally any open economy? There is any ideal open economy existing in the world? Is there any ideal open economy in the world? Anyone? Is it clear? The concept of the open economy is clear. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now tell me, is there any ideal open economy in the world which is existing? See, there is not a single ideal open economy exist in the world. Right? This is basically a reference only. Even if you talk about country like, if you talk about country like US, right? You might have seen in the recent past, you might have heard the term trade wars, right? There was a very popular term, trade wars. Trade war was nothing but actually what happens that see, these things will be cleared as we go through different chapters. These things will be cleared when we will discuss liberalization, privatization, globalization. Ideally, open economy is saying that there is no barrier to anything. That means you can come into any country and go out of the country. That means if a country does not put any barrier for external goods, then your economy will be devastated, right? That's why what these countries do, these countries put certain restrictions or technically barriers in the form of either duties, right, or in form of a number of restrictions. I'll talk you certain popular things. You might have heard that Britain did not allow Indian mangoes. I think it was 2 or 3 years back. Alfonso mangoes were not allowed in US on the pretext that the chemical or the pesticides was used in those chemicals in a huge quantity. First thing. Secondly, the crackers from this Tamil Nadu, Shivpuri, I think, if I'm not wrong, Shivpuri, in Shivpuri crackers are manufactured. The crackers from Shivpuri were not allowed on the pretext that child labor was used for the production of Shivkasi. hai kya? Some of our species are also not allowed to some countries. Yes, Shivkasi, yes. Later on, I recall it Shivkashi, right? So the reason being, if a country is not putting restrictions, then what will happen? For example, imagine a situation in which Indian economy is having only the Chinese products, because Chinese products are cheaper in comparison to Indian products. They are cheaper and comparatively qualitative, right? Then your manufacturing sector will be no more. That's why countries put certain restrictions, but those restrictions are logical restrictions, which we will discuss later on, right? They are just and they are in sync with the global standards which are set by World Trade Organization. So open economies, ideally there is not a single economy in the world which is open economy, right? And I was referring to, sir, aren't Singapore and Hong Kong relatively the most open economies? See, I am again telling you that economies, for example, the most open economy are said to be Singapore, Hong Kong, and these so-called US, and all these countries like the Maldives and sorry, the Mauritius, Switzerland. Right. These are examples of almost open economies. An ideal economy will affect the condition of local manufacturing taxes and so on. Yes, Harish, you are absolutely right. Right. So Switzerland, countries like Switzerland, they're also to an extent ideal economy. But I am saying no economy is an ideal economy. Right. So I was referring to trade war. Trade war is basically, it's all about acquiring the market. What's happening? China is acquiring the market of US. Now US realize in the name of open economy, I am losing the jobs. Americans are losing the jobs to the Chinese because manufacturing from US has been shifted to China. Now the person who is going to fight the election of this US presidentship is accountable to the voter of US. He's not accountable to Chinese people, right? And the people are losing jobs. Then what he will do, right? He is also a politician. So trade war is basically, it's a term in which the duties, import duties were increased by US in lieu of that Chinese products were uh, in the US market. Right? This we will try understand later on, but it was just a reference, just to understand the open economy, the basic concept, right? Then comes closed economy. Closed economy means, again, it's just opposite to open economy. Neither export goods and services, nor you can borrow, nor you can go out of country, right? No export, isolationist, no aid, no imports, autarky, that means no trade, self-reliant, can defend itself. These are the characteristics of closed economy. Again, question comes, is there an economy which is closed economy ideally? Any economy which is ideally closed. I'm referring to ideally closed. Uh, Again, it's to an extent, right? To an extent, North Korean economy is to an extent a closed economy, but see, Chinese economy is open. Chinese economy is completely open economy, and it's not open when Jiang Pao reforms took place. Then Jiang Pao undertook reforms, I think in 70s or 80s. At that time, Chinese economy became open, right? So Chinese economy, you cannot say Chinese economy is an open economy. Right? It's communist, right? But again, the parameter is different. Here we are referring to the relationship of the economies with respect to world. So China on this parameter is an open economy, but it's a communist, that we will discuss later on, right? To an extent, North Korea is an closed economy, right? But it's nearer to the closed economy, but it's not closed, right? Because everybody knows that they are having relationship with China. No, Brazil is not a closed economy. Rather, you can say that tribal economies are to an extent closed economies. Tribal economies, tribal communities, and more specifically, tribal economies of Africa, right, are to an extent closed economy, right? And then coming to, and prior to the liberal reforms announced in this Cuba under the Fidel Castro was also to an extent near to the closed economy, but right now it's completely open economy. Right? So this is all about open and closed economy. Now, most importantly, what about Indian economy prior to 1990s? What was the status of Indian economy prior to 1990s, or more specifically 1980s? Any idea? What was the status of Indian economy, and more specifically after 1947 until 1980s? What was the status of Indian economy? Was it closed or open or nearer to closed? Brazil imported the least amount of goods in the world. Imports the see, but still it imports now. If you see the recent vaccination time, it was importing. Oh, that was some charges erupt. That was different story, but it was importing this vaccine from India. I think from Covishield. Nearer to close, okay. Nearer to close. Indian economy nearer to close. Okay, I think it was near close because no transaction was there. Okay. Nehruvian, to extend open economy, but Nehruvian socialist policy. Okay. Anybody else? India was almost closed economic cause we banned all foreign goods from East India. From East India Company. Why do you take this specific term East India Company? Because they ruled us. See, to an extent, Indian economy was closer to the closed economy, right? So the most characteristic at the time was there was a term, we'll discuss it later on, import substitution. There was a term import substitution. This term summarizes the status of Indian economy after 1947 until 1980s or 90s, right? Import substitution, as the name suggests, we have to substitute the imports. That means if we are substituting the imports, that means we have to be self-reliant. We have to be self-reliant, and self-reliance is a characteristic of the closed economy. But you know that we were still importing oil, right? We were still looking for grains, right? From prior to green revolution, we were. Have I told you about something PL 480 or any discussion that how India was humiliated while it was committed grains by US? Yes or no?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No. See, what happened that it was actually basically when there was drought in 1960s and all at that time. So Indira Gandhi went to US, and at that time we were facing drought. And secondly, the problem was we were not having grains. So she requested for grains, and US committed for that. Then later on, what happened? Vietnam issue was going on at that time. So India has been uh, non-aligned. We adopted non-aligned rather than aligning to any bloc. So at the time, what happened that uh, India criticized the stand of US on Vietnam. So at the time, the president was asked by US president was asked on that comment on the stand of India on this Vietnam. Then actually she commented in UN. She criticized US. I think she went there to participate in UN, right? Then the president stated that it is India to decide whether they need grains or they would like to criticize our stand on Vietnam. Basically, PL 480 is a clause in US constitution, US legal system, which provides for assistance from US to different countries, right? So if the US was giving us, so grains were to be provided in PL 480 regime to India. Now, what happened when these grains arrived at the Indian seashore? Those grains were rotted, they were rotten, right? And secondly, it's a very popular thing that people used to say that there's a there's a weed in northern India. If you see wheat here, there's a weed in northern India. So it is said that people, the farmers used to say that that weed was basically part of that consignment which came from US prior to that. So US was in the, for the namesake, it was supporting India by giving grains, but that grains were having n number of issues. First, they were rotten, and they were having weeds and all those things, right? So when they were used as the seeds, it created problem, and the problem uh, persisted for long. So I want to say that then Indira Gandhi realized that that we have been humiliated by US. Then these people are motivated to have this green revolution, and we are forced to the wall, right? So PL 480 is basically a clause of US in which it is providing support to the foreign countries. So ideally, if we talk India after 1947, we are nearer to the closed economy. Basically, we followed the idea of import substitution. Sir, Pakistan is a relatively closed economy with low levels of exposure to internet trade and struggle. See, Pakistan is having nothing at its own. They are ultra open economy in the sense that they are having nothing of their own. Everything is being financed by other people itself. Neither they are having finance. Prior to it, US was supporting them. Now, if you see, China is supporting them only. If China is nowhere in Pakistan, can you imagine Pakistan? And 10 years back, 10 or 20 years back, prior to Obama's regime, you cannot imagine Pakistan without US because US was supporting them, right? So close economy means there is no movement. Close means no movement, right? No movement, anything, no export, no import. They are getting all the arms from US in the previously, and now if you see, all the investments are coming from China. So Pakistan is not at all a closed economy. So we are talking about India. So basically, we focus on the idea of import substitution, right? That means we were supposed to substitute the imports. That means we have to develop manufacturing sector at our own, right? Now, when I was discussing the idea of Hindu rate of growth, and we were analyzing the comment of Arun Shourie, no country can survive without movement. Yes, in today's context, no country can survive without movement. That means almost all the economies are nearer to the closed economy in contemporary world, right? So when we were analyzing the comment of Arun Shourie stated that the reason for Hindu rate of growth after independence was Nehruvian socialist policy, and most prominently it stand on closed economy. We relied upon import substitution. That means we did not uh, we did not have interactions with the globe. But at that time, many economists argued that it was an attempt to develop our own setup. Because if we depend upon the world for every need, then we could not develop at our own. So many economists says that it was only because of the policy of import substitution that we developed our core industries, we developed basic infrastructure at our own, right? So these are the arguments. But yes, these policies of closed economy to an extent were responsible for low growth economy, because after 1991 the same economy attained the growth rate of 8 to 9%, right? And because of that we also were having a number of inefficiencies in the economy, which we will discuss later on in the uh, classes. Sir, is Atmanirbhar Bharat policy is also a way to close it? I was expecting this question. This is a very good question from your side. See, this is a very debatable question, because recently what's happening in this Atmanirbhar Bharat policy, that there is the policy states that when you are planning to purchase anything, especially the government department, if they are having a tender of 100 rupees, you can purchase if and only if there is 60% component is minimum local content. That means 60% out of it should be produced by the local producer, right? So uh, see, close economy, we are not close economy. Actually, when we will be discussing globalization and deglobalization in the coming classes, then we will try to understand why world is again moving from globalization, right? Why trade wars are taking place, right? But Atmanirbhar Bharat policy actually is, you can't say that we are moving towards closed economy, because we haven't restricted anybody to participate. But yes, uh, the issues related to this Atmanirbhar policy went into WTO. This US, specifically in case of solar panels, raised this issue in WTO because US raised the issue that you are allowing only we can fight for 40%, then it is against the concept of the WTO, right? Because WTO says that you cannot discriminate against a local producer and a foreign producer. Then this clause is basically against the concept of this WTO regime. Though India, I think, lost that battle, but still we are continuing with this, right? Because now, after this corona, countries are to an extent moving towards inward looking. They are inward looking now because they have to sustain themselves. So, on that pretext, we are not close economy. Actually, it's more an attempt to revive the economy, right? Or you can say to survive the economy from the onslaught of the external economies, from the global economies, right? So if you see every recent at the international platform, many such discourses are going on right now. One discourse is going on right now, not in the developing countries, but the developed countries are concluding that they are trying to control the multinational companies in the sense that actually these multinational companies are making fool of everyone, right? Actually, they are making fool of everyone irrespective of the country. Neither they are paying taxes to US where these companies belongs to, neither they are paying taxes to the countries where they are operating, like India, right? So developed as well as the developing countries are on a single page on this point that we have to do something in an attempt to control these MNCs. Right. So a number of issues are going on, and this Atmanirbhar Bharat policy is just an attempt to inward looking so as to revive the economy. I don't see it is an see what was happening at the time. We did not even take the quality. We did not take the qualitative aspects up from abroad the world. But now, what is happening right now? Everywhere, if you find anything qualitative across the world, you can adopt that. Even this Atmanirbhar Bharat policy is saying what they are saying. It is basically part of Make in India. They are saying that you can do copy paste, right? You have to put manufacturing plant in India. What does it mean? If you want to, if Apple wants to sell iPhone, then you are welcome. You come up with a plant in India, then it's not a part of closure. Apple is coming to India now. That means it's a re-strategy to revive the economy, nothing else. It's not closer to the closed economy, but it is basically an attempt to make India a manufacturing hub, nothing else. Right. So with this, I'll end it today. Any query? It's a very good question, Umang. Was India an excessive regulated mixed economy pre 1991? Yes, absolutely. India was excessively regulated mixed economy. We'll discuss what is mixed economy in the next class. Yes, you're right. Anything else? So with this, we'll be meeting tomorrow, and tomorrow we'll continue with this.